Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this video, I wanted to talk about what we're starting to see right now, which is a fall transition period. You know, September is primarily known as a summertime month, but it really is really the first month that you start to see a shad migration into the backs of creeks, which is a big window of opportunity for shallow water power fishermen to start catching fish shallow again with baits like a swim jig or a chatterbait, or throwing a buzzbait or some other type of topwater. It's a really fun time period. It's one of my absolute favorites. It may not be like the time period where you see the biggest weights being caught on any lake, but I feel like you can catch pretty good numbers and you can do it, you know, with those really fun, fast-moving power fishing tactics. And of all of those presentations that you could possibly use during the shad migration during the fall, so like September, October primarily, but even into November, you'll find the shad kind of remain back there in the creeks. Of all the baits that you can throw, I would say that a swim jig and a chatterbait take the cake. But when do you want to use one over the other? Should you just use one and not the other? You know, the answer to me is no. Yeah, both of them have their strengths and weaknesses, and so I wanted to go ahead and talk about some of those today. First off, I do want to mention something that I haven't really talked about a lot recently, but I definitely want to start putting out there, and that is that I've started to guide more. You know, I'm really starting to book some more guide trips. It's something I've become a lot more interested in. And we've got some great resources here. We've got Watts Bar, Chickamauga, Nickajack. Those are the lakes that I guide on. And so if you are interested in going on a guide trip with me out on any of these three lakes, I'd love to take you out. All you have to do is reach out at Sonar at SonarFishing.com. That's my email. Or you can just go to SonarFishing.com as well. But yeah, I'd love to take you out. It's a lot of fun on these Tennessee River lakes, and yeah, we'll go have a good day out there on the water. But anyways, let's talk about swim jig and chatterbait. So let's kind of set the table for the areas that you want to focus on during the fall. Again, it's creeks, and when I'm talking about creeks, I'm primarily talking about like major feeder creeks, not like the giant long ones necessarily, you know, on a lake, like the biggest tributaries, but like a creek that has that narrows up pretty good, and then at the end it just dead ends into either a running creek, or one that really only flows when when it rains, but it has like a creek bed, so it's fresh incoming water during the fall. Those are the type of areas that I like to focus on, during the September, October time period. And what you get in the backs of these creeks when the shad get back there, you've got shad that are already way back in the shallow areas, the shallow flats, you know, that last stretch of creek channel before it, you know, gets too shallow to bring your boat. And you've also got shad that are making their way back towards that area. But pretty much all those shad at some point in time are going to make their way into the very backs of those creeks. And so you want baits that can allow you to fish different targets and different types of areas in that creek. And for a lot of the creeks around here, you've got a mixture of, you've got some docks, you've got some laydowns along the shoreline, you've got some random stick-ups that you know, blown in like brush or stuff like that, that's maybe sitting on the flat. You see one little stick poking up through the water. You've also got little patches of vegetation, maybe even more than just a patch. Maybe you got a bunch of vegetation. All of those things are pretty common to see in the backs of these creeks, and you need to have baits that can cover all of them. And really, to me, the chatterbait and the swim jig do well to cover all those different situations. Let's first talk about the swim jig. So the swim jig is a very great power fishing tactic for this time of year, because it imitates a shad really well. You can also imitate, bluegill and also a crawfish too. But shad, is really good. This is the core tackle swim jig. I've got the Z-Man goat on the back, the pearl goat. And this is a bait that does exceptionally well around a variety of cover. It's not my favorite around vegetation, although it does work well around vegetation, like submergent grass. So it's great around emergent vegetation, such as like water willow or reeds or pads or things like that. But it doesn't do like super well around submergent vegetation because it doesn't, if you get like a little bit of hydrilla wrapped around the nose of it, it doesn't shake it off. It doesn't have any like wide wobble or anything like that to like shake that vegetation off. You have to pop your rod tip and hope that it just ends up coming off. But what it does really well too is fishing around hard cover. Like a swim jig is the best. I'm going to throw it out there. It's the best hard cover reaction bait out there on the market, in my opinion. Subsurface reaction bait, because it can come through laydowns, it can come through brush, you can skip it underneath docks. There's so many different types of hard cover that this will be fished through. The core tackle one right here has a pretty heavy duty stainless steel wire weed guard that protects the hook. Other baits are more traditionally, like the Z-Man snakehead swim jig has a brush guard on it. So it's like those nylon brush, strands that create the brush guard. Both of them work pretty well. This is a really good one. It's a little bit more sturdy for like heavier cover situations. But that makes it just an all-terrain vehicle. You can throw it around a lot of hard cover. But again, it's not my first choice for when I'm fishing thick vegetation. So another thing that makes it not like a perfect choice for fishing in submergent grass is it doesn't put off as much vibration as, say, a chatterbait does. A chatterbait's going to pull those fish out of that cover because they can not only, if they can't see the presentation, they can feel it through their lateral line, and it's making noise. So swim jig is primarily what I'm going to be using a lot of times before I get to the back of the creek. So like lining the edges of the creek, you either got docks or like laydowns and things like that. That's where I'm going to be throwing the swim jig. Maybe even some emergent grass like the water willow that we mentioned. But I'm going to be throwing a swim jig around that type of stuff. The chatterbait, on the other hand, though it is super versatile and you can throw it in pretty much all the situations you throw the swim jig, again, not very good around hard cover. It snags on all different types of branches and laydowns and dock posts and things like that. Although there's plenty that you can do to mitigate that and not snag too much, or you just put up with it. But the chatterbait does another thing very, very well, and that is it covers water in the backs of creeks really, really super well, like especially if you got a little bit of submergent grass. This is the bait that I like to choose when I'm trying to just fan cast once I'm in the backs of those creeks where it's really, really ultra shallow. The chatterbait's really good, and I do like to throw a chatterbait around any isolated stick up or little patch of grass or anything, any dark object I see under the water, I'm going to cast to on these shallow flats, and a chatterbait is a really good way to pull a fish off of that cover. Another thing that a chatterbait does really well is it fishes great in dirty water, and usually as you get to the backs of these creeks, that's when you get the most stained and dingy water, and you need that chatterbait to have that heavy vibration to call those fish out. So chatterbait to me is the back half of a creek type of bait, and then the swim jig is kind of the front half of the creek. So another thing I didn't mention about a swim jig is I think it works better because it's just a little bit more subtle in clear water, which again, like I just mentioned, you're going to have clear water at the mouth of the creek, and as you move back towards the very back, that's when you're going to get to the dingy water. So I'm not necessarily saying you should stop throwing a swim jig in the very backs of a creek, or you shouldn't throw a chatterbait in the fronts of the creek. But I'm saying that in general, you tend to see conditions that are more conducive to a chatterbait in the backs, and the same thing for a swim jig kind of in the front portion of a creek. So anyways, guys, just wanted to do that video real quick. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the points that I made in this video. I'm going to put the links to my favorite arsenal for both the swim jig and the chatterbait for this time of year. So check out those links. Other than that, I'm going to see you out on the water. Make sure you trust the process.